We are holding on page Nun Gimel Amud Base 53b, and we are at the Mishnah. The Mishnah is right in the middle of the page. It's approximately 30 lines from the top and 30 lines from the bottom. And the Mishnah is talking about the blowing of the trumpets. Now, we've learned already about the blowing of the trumpets, but we learned about it specifically regarding the holiday of Sukkot, blowings of the trumpets. And our Mishnah is going to talk about also the general blowing of the trumpets that was done on a regular basis every day. And it's also going to calculate how many of the blasts were blown on a regular day and how many blasts were blown on holidays like Rosh Chodesh or other Yom Tovim, Pesach, and Shavuos, and Sukkot. And it's also going to talk about on Erev Shabbos. There was also blasts that were blown and how many of them. And so then on top of all that, you have the water libation ceremony, which also involved blowing blasts with the trumpets. So we've got the regular daily blasts, we've got holiday blasts, we've got Erev Shabbos blasts, and then we've got water libation blasts. And the Mishnah is going to go through the numbers, how many, and when were they done. And so in order to know the Mishnah, you really need to remember, or it's advisable to remember what we learned in the previous two Mishnayos. So we had the Mishnah on page 51b, and that Mishnah mentioned, it was talking about the water libations, and the Mishnah mentioned then about the if you didn't see the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, you never saw what real joy is, and talked about them lighting up the menorahs, the candelabras for this special ceremony, and they would bring the oil there. The people would dance, and the Chassidim on Shemaisa. And the Mishnah had said, and this is the reason I'm bringing this, is that it mentioned over there that the two Kohanim would stand by the Shar HaElyon, this upper gate, which opens up, and a person can they would go down those stairs that were right. They would start at that upper gate, which is also called the Shar Nicanor. It was a gate that separated between the Israelite section of the Beis Hamikdash and the women's section of the Beis Hamikdash. And you would the two Kohanim would stand there with two chatzotzres, with two trumpets in their hands, and there would be someone who would announce Kara Hagever, which is the announcer would announce, and they would blow the tekiah, trua tekiah. Now, the announcer would announce that it's time to get ready for the service, bringing the sacrifice, the daily sacrifice. And on the Sukkot holiday, there was a special blowing then. It was a tekiah, teruah, tekiah. You would have these three blasts with the trumpets. A regular day, they would have an announcer announce, we got to get ready. And they would open up that door of the, which is this Nicanor gate, and specifically on Sukkot, they would do the blowing of the trumpets then. And the Mishnah, this is the Mishnah on page 51b, and then the Mishnah continues, and it mentions that they would walk down to the 10th step, and they would blow again tekiah, trua, tekiah. Then they would continue going down. After the 10th step, they would go down to the floor, which is the Azara. It's called the Ezras Nashim, the women's section. And they would blow, again, a tekiah, trua, tekiah, a group of three, a set of three blasts. And that set of three blasts, they would elongate. They would continue doing those until they reach the outer gate, until they reach the Shar HaYotze, which is the doorway that led outside of the women's section to the mountain that the Beis Hamikdash was on. So it went outside. You were still connected to the Beis Hamikdash in the women's section, and then you would go, and they would continue blowing the tekiah, trua, tekiah, as they were going towards getting the water. They were leaving the structure with the women's section of the Beis Hamikdash, going now to the mountain that the Beis Hamikdash was on, and they were leaving it, and they would finish that blow, the tekiah, trua, tekiah. So we spoke about three sets of three blasts, tekiah, trua, tekiah, and there were three sets of them. We had the upper doorway, the upper gate. It's called the Shar Nikunar. They would do the first set of three, then they would go to the 10th step and do a second set of three blasts, and then they would go to the floor and blow a third set of these of three blasts. And that third set was actually while they were walking from the floor of the Ezras Nashim till they left the Ezras Nashim, till they reached the east outer gate. They would be blowing those three blasts. And that's when the Mishnah mentioned that they would turn around and they would bow and say, our fathers, they worship the sun. They would put their back to Hashem and they would face the sun. And we are facing you, Hashem. And anu leka ve'einenu leka, right? Or anu leka mishtachavim ve'leka einenu miyachalim, and they would basically emphasize how we are serving you, Hashem, and that was part of this water libation, water drawing ceremony. Now, before that, the Mishnah spoke about a fourth set of the water drawing ceremony, and that was on page 48, and that was page 48, 48a. It said the Nisuch HaMayim, the water libation. How was it done? And it mentions that they would get water in this golden jug, 3 lugs. They would fill it from this shiloyach well, and they would bring the water into the Beis Hamikdash. It's called the Shar HaMayim, the gate of water. That's where they would enter. And at that point, they would blow a fourth set of 3 blows on the trumpets. Tekiah, teruah, tekiah. Tekiah means a long blast. The teruah is some type of broken up blast, and a tekiah, another long blast. So that was the set of 3. And this is the fourth set of 3 that we're learning about. So again, the Mishnah on 48a talks about a fourth set of 3 blasts, and the Mishnah on 51b talked about the first 3 sets of these 3 blasts. So Mishnah on page 53b is what we're learning now, and it's going to start off with the regular daily blasts, and then it's going to add on what you add on a regular. We're going to have what you do on a regular day, what you add on for holidays, what you add on for Erev Shabbos when on a Friday, and what you add on for the water libation ceremony blasts for Sukkot. So it says, "Ein peichsin meyesrim v'yachas tekiyos." You don't do less than 21 blows. The Migdash and the Beis Hamikdash. Ve'ein meisifan al arboim u'shmeina, and you don't do more than 48. So how many blasts do you regularly blast? Do you regularly blow? Only 21 on a regular day. How many blasts is the most you blow? 48. On every day, they would have 21 blows. You have 3 when they would open the 6 of the 7 gates of the Azara. That this is not talking about the opening of the Nicanor gate. This is talking about the other 6 gates. They would open them. They would blow. They would blow 3 blasts for the opening of the gates, and that was like the first. That was like an early morning blowings for the opening of the gates. The Beis Hamikdash is now going to be opened. 6 of the 7 gates were open. Then, and that was on a regular day. And then it's the 9 blasts for the morning sacrifice. V'teisha l'tamid shel shachar, 9 for the morning sacrifice, the daily sacrifice, carbon oila, burnt offering was done every day. 2 lambs, 1 lamb in the morning, 1 lamb in the afternoon. So you have that sacrifice, the morning sacrifice called the tamid, and they would blow 9 blasts. Why would they blow 9 blasts? All the blasts were always sets of 3. So you have 3 sets of 3 blasts. And what did they do when they were bringing that sacrifice? They would recite the Shir Shel Yom, the Psalm of the day. And that's the psalm that we recite every day. Each day, a Sunday psalm, a Monday psalm. There's certain psalms that are always recited. That psalm is a Sunday psalm. There's chapter 24. And then you have the Monday psalm. And then you have the Tuesday. Each psalm is for that day. And they would recite that in the Beis Hamikdash. They would divide it into 3 parts. And so they would blow 3 blasts for the first part, 3 blasts for the second part, 3 blasts for the third part. You had 9 blasts. And that was during the morning sacrifice, the Tamid Shel Shachar B'Teisha, and then another 9 blasts, the Tamid Shel Bein Harabayim, for the afternoon sacrifice. And believe it or not, that was also, they would say the Shir Shel Yom. They would say that they would do the Psalm of the day, and they would divide it into 3, and they would blow the 3 sets of 3 blasts for each part of that Psalm of the day. Interestingly enough, we do not recite Shir Shel Yom at Mincha. They did. And the famous question is, so why don't we? If we're commemorating what they did in the Beis Hamikdash, why don't we blow it at Mincha? Why don't we recite Shir Shel Yom at Mincha? Why don't we say the Psalm of the day at Mincha, at the afternoon service? And the simple understanding seems to be that even though they would recite it then, it wasn't an obligation. It was customary for them to recite it, but we're not obligated to do it. It wasn't obligatory. It was just done sort of like a custom that they would say the Shir Shel Yom, and therefore we don't necessarily have to commemorate it. It's like an extra bonus. Now, and then there was also, so you have the 3 at the opening of the gates, 9 at the morning sacrifice, 9 at the afternoon sacrifice. So altogether, you have 9 plus 9 and 3 is altogether 18, and 3 is 21. So that's the daily sacrifices that were the daily blowings of the trumpets were 21 blows, 21 types of blows. In other words, there was the tekiah blows. Every tekiah came first. Then you had a teruah. Teruah was a broken blow. And then you had again a tekiah, a solid blow. And altogether, if you add each of these blows up, each of these blows, you had 21. Each blow actually was part of a set of 3. So really 7 sets, but it ended up being 21 blows. Okay.